Hi, Dr. Ong.
Dr. Ong, you
Hi.
see? Hello.
You look very good today, Dr.
Yeah,
Ong.
sorry for being late. Anyway, I heard the good news by
Good afternoon.
I heard the good news by BK just now that many of your workers, including your foreign workers, have been picked for pick.
Yeah, all of them actually, 100%.
Yeah, so for your foreign workers, just give them try to arrange for. I assume you're going to arrange for transportation, right?
Oh yeah, we have to arrange for buses. We will arrange our supervisors to be with them as well.
Yeah. So just
unfortunately, we are in the Rembau region.
You're lucky lah. The minister is there.
So the Rembau town is under lockdown.
Oh, okay.
And they cannot come out for their jabs. So all of them were supposed to have their jabs on the 21st, has to be rescheduled.
Okay. Who is this? BK? Is it BK?
Yeah, BK Ong. Yeah, I'm from GB Industries. Sorry, can you see me? Cannot.
Yeah, I saw you just now.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, BK, later you get my contact details from Suklink. You WhatsApp me and then I'll try to. I mean, lockdown. I can't change anything about the lockdown now, but maybe can try to see what will happen after the lockdown. But Negeri Sembilan don't have to worry. The even though there's no official operation surge capacity in Negeri Sembilan, the vaccine allocation is actually quite plentiful. I saw the slides this morning. So at the CITF meeting, so you don't have to worry. Yeah.
So the sad thing is our staff are in all the tamans that are locked down.
That one I cannot help.
Our factory can operate, but nobody to run. So we are shutting down still.
Okay, CALLUM, Suling, over to you guys. Okay, just share the screen. So just let me share screen later. That's all I ask.
Okay, make you co-host.
Okay, thanks.
So we have about 369 registered today. Right now we have 185. So CALLUM, you want to start now or you want to wait?
Okay, let's start now.
You start now,
We'll be on time.
Okay, thank you. So very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We hope everyone stays safe and healthy through this unusual time. Welcome to SHRDC webinar series co-organized with Malaysian Plastic Manufacturers Association, MPMA, on how SMEs can survive the COVID-19 crisis and get ready to grow post-pandemic. So hi, my name is Tay Suk Ling. I'm the Executive Director of Selangor Human Resource Development Center, or in short, SHRDC. SHRDC is a non-for-profit talent development center established by the industry and also the government in 1992. So we are in business for 29 years already to provide industry-relevant training. Our competency-based training programs ensure job readiness and also recognized by the industry. So we offer programs and training programs and certification programs for specific competencies in the area of manufacturing, ICT, microsystem, solar photovoltaic, aerospace, and the most recent one is Industry 4.0. So that's a quick introduction about SHRDC. So let's look at how SMEs are doing right now. So SME contributed about 39.8% to the GDP and 48.4% of the country's employment for year 2019. Okay, and based on the survey conducted by the Ministry of Entrepreneurial Development and Cooperative last month, I think in June, it is estimated that about some 580,000 businesses representing 49% of the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector are at risk of falling by October if they are not allowed to operate by then. Okay, so if we are affected, what can we do and how should we address these business issues? So in this pandemic, how can we survive the crisis? What else can we do to get ready to grow post-pandemic as well? So we will need to know how government policies affect our business. We will need to know which strategies that can help us now or even help us to continue to grow. We will need to analyze and capitalize on the opportunities available within the country and also abroad. Thus, we need someone who is familiar with business strategies, policy making, experience in government agencies, and of course, being on the ground, knowing what's really happening in the industry. So we can't think of who will be more suitable to share with us other than with us here, Dr. Ong Kian Ming, Member Parliament Bangi, and also our former Deputy Minister of MIPI. So Dr. Ong is honored to have you here with us today. And in today's webinar, our format will be slightly different from other webinars where we show slides and the speaker will do the talking. Today we will be a bit more interactive. We will be discussing real business issue, and also Dr. Ong will then share the possible practical solutions. All right. So with us also we have today the Managing Director of LH Plus Sdn Bhd. I think everyone know Mr. CALLUM. I know one of the world's largest consumer goods product company, LH Plus. Yeah. So everyone know.
Sorry, not one of the world. Malaysia. Largest international branded OEM. The one I have to change my website. My apologies.
Okay. All right. So CALLUM will be moderating the discussion with Dr. Ong today. CALLUM is also the honorary president of MPMA. We all know that. The president of a Malaysian consortium of mid-tier companies, MCMPC. The chairman of Malaysian Plastic Design Center, MPDC. The co-chairman representing Asia of the Global Plastic Alliance. And he's also the Secretary General of the Asia Plastic Forum, APF, comprising of all ASEAN countries and China, Japan, India, Bangladesh, and also Sri Lanka. Okay, so before we start, let me go through some ground rules for today's discussion. Yeah. So we talk about business. We don't talk about these three topics. Yeah. We don't complain about SOP. No comments or questions about current political situation, and no complaining about the vaccination rate. All right, so these three things we will not discuss in this session. We will focus our discussion around doing business during these difficult times. So something like something that we can control, something that we can take charge, something we can make us that can make us more productive. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, this session will be interactive. So you can post your questions or comment in the chat box. All right. Or if you wish to speak during the Q&A session, please click on the reaction item. There's a one raise hand button. All right. Click the raise hand button. We will call your name. You can unmute and then you will speak after that. All right. So before we start, maybe we want to do a group photo together first.
I think so. Let's do the group photo later when more people are in.
Okay. Right. Okay. Then right now, so without further delay, maybe Mr. CALLUM, you take over the session from here.
Thank you, Sok Ling, and thank you, Dr. Ong. Please call me CALLUM. I dropped the Mr. Set stage. Let's keep it very casual, very interactive. We are here to learn. We are not here, okay, to teach. Before that, I think many of you know, Dr. Ong's background, but not very sure how many of you know that he's a very avid runner. Okay, he runs a lot. I don't know how many kilometers a day. Maybe Dr. Ong can share with us later. But more important is that many people are not aware that Dr. Ong was a former consultant with Boston Consulting Group. And this USA group is not cheap. So Dr. Ong, I salute you because you chose to do pro bono services for people who cannot afford to engage expensive consultants who may or may not be giving them the right advice. And this is what the Chinese says, selling coal in the middle of winter. And I think this is something very noble. Okay, and let's do that. What I'm going to do, since there are quite a number of participants who are not from the plastics industry, I thought I'd share a bit of the background of MPMA and the Malaysian plastics industry. Next, please. Okay, MPMA was established in 1967. It's 54 years now, because this was last year's slide. The same year with ASEAN. ASEAN was also formed in 1967. And since we are on the subject of time, this is my 43rd year with MPMA on a voluntary basis. When I joined MPMA in 1978, I still remember I was the youngest active committee member there, going in to learn and all that. So now I'm I'm actually the most senior now in terms of age, other than Siwai Chow. Otherwise, Siwai Chow will be angry with that. Okay, in MPMA. And people also ask me, Callum, how can you stay so long in any association for the matter? And I said the answer is simple. MPMA being a very responsible, very progressive, and very proactive trade association, find ways and means to help our members who are, I think, 81% SMEs. And in MPMA, there is no politics. You are not chosen or elected to be the president because of the size of the company. Not that. It's because of the leadership, your commitment to the association, and how well you can lead. So, and after I stepped down as the president in 2004, I stayed on as the honorary president, but I also remind myself that now, Dato' Lim is the president. So my job is to be a passenger, to help steer and advise and let the president run the association. Okay, MPMA members account for 60% of, back to the thing, of total companies in Malaysia. But in terms of, I think, investment and turnover, we account for 81%. By the way, this will be reported, and then, this will be recorded. We can share with you later on. And MPMA is also chosen the secretary for APF, the Asia Plastics Forum, like what Sok Ling introduced earlier on. And here in APF, we do not talk about business, we talk about the 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, recycle. We talk about carbon footprint. We talk about, and we talk about climate change. We talk about circular economy, and we talk about carbon emission. Things very general and related and impacting everyone. Next, please. I think this is a bit small. There are about 1,300 plastics companies, manufacturers in Malaysia, and we contribute to about 4.3% back then. Now it's minus of the country's GDP. And employment, we are employing directly and indirectly about 80,000 people, with a turnover of about 48.4 billion, and of which export is about 13.3 billion. So this is direct export. When you look into the indirect export, it totals about 70%. Next, please. Plastic industry. We are a strategic pillar for the manufacturing sector, an inherently innovative industry, as well as an enabler. Ladies and gentlemen, the word is enabler of innovation across the different subsectors. Next, please. Okay, by segment, I think the packaging segment takes up the biggest percentage of about 40%. Okay, automotive by 8%, construction 8%, household, which my company does a lot. We export about 85 to 90% of our output to the US and Japan and all that. Only takes about 3%. And what we do, the reason is because I think all of you know China exports a lot of lower cost items. And to compete with them, we have no choice but to upgrade to do higher value items. And I think this is what most people should do and should start moving towards. Agriculture is only 3%, and then of course others 3%. Next, please. Plastics packaging subsector is 43% largest segment, market segment of the plastics industry, and provides critical support for the F&B, the medical, the chemicals, cooking oil, detergent, fertilizer, etc. And when you look at the packaging, ladies and gentlemen, it is not just straight plastics bags. It's multi-layer, up to 5-6 layers now. Some, but they have the EVOH, the nylon, they have the aluminum, and it's a lot of technology that goes into it, and not just plain plastic bags. And you have the gas barrier, the oxygen barrier, the carbon dioxide barrier. And that's why the product, lifespan of the product is much longer when you put on the shelf. Next, please. Electronic subsector contributed to 27% of plastics industry turnover in 2020. Malaysia is a major manufacturer hub for E&E, and I think all of you know that we export about 387 billion a year, and the plastics is one big enabler to them. And when you look at the, let's say the aircon, other than the electronic parts and the metal parts, the rest are all plastics. Same with the handphone, same with the washing machine, same with everything. Next, please. Automotive, okay, I think all of you know, everyone is trying to downweight and still make the car very safe. And this is where the composite material comes in for the automotive sector. And it's lightweighting the car. And okay, it's the third largest in Southeast Asia after Thailand, with 2 million, and Indonesia 1.1 million. So this is what we are looking at. We are approximately doing 600,000 cars a year now. Next, please. Construction sector, okay, changing from all the other pipes. Now instead of PVC, they have the UPVC, they have the UHDP and all that. All this ultra weight to make the product stronger, lighter, more durable, and better. Next, please. And the plastics industry, okay, like I say, export is 13.3 billion. It's about 27% exported. When retained in the country as finished product is about 28%. So 45% are manufactured as parts and components, which goes into subsectors such as E&E, medical, and all that. So when you look at the whole thing, total export is actually 70%. And because Malaysia is such a small country, you know, the only way out is to go into export. Next, please. Okay, to navigate a very highly competitive export market, production focus on high value added and export-oriented products, sophisticated technology to gain better competitive edge. Machines now, when we talk about export, we are talking about the whole line, which costs many millions of ringgit, you know, some 10, 15 ringgit or more. And this is where we have very consistent quality, very high technology involved, and then high output. And that way, it is the only way to move forward, to make sure that we are able to command that kind of competitive edge in the world market. In fact, Malaysia is the largest exporter of string film. All those things people do, packaging and all that, in Asia, even exporting a lot to Japan and all that. And then faster to market, you know, we talk about optimize cost effectiveness, improve quality and everything. Next, please. And of course, gentlemen, when we do all this with the new technology, we have to retrain and upskill our people to manage all that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that's a snapshot. So Dr. Ong, over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Callum. Good to see everyone. I'll dive straight into the 3 points that I want to raise today with regards to why I'm optimistic for the future, especially the near future. Since, you know, we've been besetted by a lot of bad news and negative news of late, I thought I wanted to give something a little bit more positive to everyone to hear. And then I'll go on to 3 points with regards to adapting to the new normal that I think all businesses should consider and think about, and to be able to work with SHRDC in order to realize some of these new normal processes. Right. Thank you so much, Sook Ling, for inviting me to speak, and I'll share 3 points which makes me optimistic for the near future. Firstly, what makes me optimistic is this COVID vaccination rate. You know, I think Sook Ling just said just now we shouldn't complain about the slow vaccination rate. I think there's good basis for that, for us not to complain, especially in the Klang Valley, because last Friday, the coordinating minister for vaccination, YB Khairy Jamaluddin, announced Operation Surge Capacity, or Operasi Lanjakan Capacity in the Klang Valley, with the promise that every single resident in Selangor and KL who have already registered with MySejahtera would get at least 1 jab by the 1st of August. Just to let you guys know, I do a lot of food distribution in my area. And whenever I do food distribution, I ask the people who receive the food whether they have been vaccinated, whether they've gotten their appointments, and so on and so forth. And in my 2 weeks or more of asking this question, what I found is that in the last week or so, you know, almost everyone who are 35 and above have gotten their appointments or at least 1 jab. And those who are 60 and above would have gotten 2 jabs already. And we're talking about the B40 here, right? So these are people who, some of them may have, challenges going to the vaccination side and whatnot. But, I think somehow people have banded together. The Selangor state government, the federal government has worked hard together to get this vaccination program on pace. And I think Wabi Kari Jamaluddin has done a very good job. So just now, I think BK Ong was saying that, all of his workers, including foreign workers, have gotten their notification via PICK. And I think this week, many of those in Selangor and KL will be getting their appointments as well, including those in their 20s, right? I think in the 30s, definitely this week you'll get. Those in their 20s, I think later this week you'll get notification. So the operation surge capacity will start proper next week, whereby we'll see at least 1.3 million Selangor and KL residents are vaccinated with either the first dose or the second dose. And this will mean that we would get to more than 90% first dose in Klang Valley, and probably very close to 40% fully vaccinated, that means 2 doses by the end of July. And when we've seen other countries with this kind of numbers, right, 40%, 30+%, 40% double vaccinated, double dose, the numbers in terms of serious cases of COVID would drop significantly. And that means that the economy can start to open up slowly but surely. And if, let's say, the drop in cases are even more significant, then I think the ability to open up even faster would be something that we can look forward to. That's first thing. Second thing I want to let you guys know is that we are all very concerned, sometimes overly concerned about the top line figures of the number of daily cases. I just want to let you guys know that that should not be the number that we should look at. The number that we should look at is actually the number of deaths, the ICU capacity, percentage positive rate, the percentage of serious cases in category 3, 4, and 5. One of the reasons why the number of cases have gone up is because we have been doing a lot more testing, which is what many people in the medical community has been advocating for. I'm glad that I think the government has seen the light in that sense. So many people have told me that there would be a strong indication towards moving towards other indicators rather than daily tests, right? So I think there's something positive. It means that, again, as the vaccination rate goes up, ICU hospitalization and the number of serious cases will go down, and it means that the economy can open up faster, which is good news for everyone, almost everyone, in Malaysia and in Malaysia, especially in the Klang Valley, that contributes about half of the cases. The third thing that I want to sort of say, which I think should give us some optimism, is that the National Recovery Plan that is being pushed by Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul, we'll see a lot more meat put into it, especially when some of this will be debated in Parliament next week, discussed and debated in Parliament on next Thursday when Parliament finally reconvenes. And I'm also glad to say that Tengku Zafrul has been very open in receiving inputs from different channels, including from my party, my leaders in my party, right? So that's the 3 good news that we should look forward to. Happy to take questions on any of this later on. Okay, so the 3 new realities that I think I want to emphasize for all of the people who are listening is the following. Firstly, I think we need to change SOPs to the new normal. And of course, this is a very general statement. I think many people have heard of this before, but I want to give specific examples. Since we're talking to MPMA here, they are important players in the manufacturing sector. One area where I think all companies, especially SMEs, mid-tier companies in the manufacturing sector should work towards is to improve the accommodation conditions of their workers, especially foreign workers. Many people are blaming the factories now for having these factory clusters. I think there should have been a better job in terms of communication, probably on the part of MITI and some of the leaders there, to let people know that actually it is not the necessarily the factories themselves, which are the source of the clusters. I think CALLUM would be able to tell us more of this. Is actually the accommodation areas where the foreign workers stay that are the source of a lot of these transmissions, because the place that they stay usually very crowded. You stay 10 to a small flat, and that's not supposed to be the way lah. Under the previous government, Act 446, which is the minimum standards for workers in terms of not just accommodation but other health, access to health, checkups and things like that, was set, but not really fully implemented. Many companies in the manufacturing sector did not follow strictly, right? And especially SMEs. So this is the time where we need to band together to try to definitely increase the adherence to the Act 446 for better accommodation arrangements for the workers, especially foreign workers in the manufacturing sector, right? That's the first thing. The second thing that I want to emphasize is, when we talk about adapting to the new normal, right? There would be new normals in terms of new products that are being manufactured by the plastics sector, right? So I give you one example. There's a pretty big plastics company that's in my kawasan. It's in Bandar Baru Bangi. I won't say the name, but they are a listed company. They have big factories, not just in Bandar Baru Bangi, but also in Johor. And they are a major supplier to international electronics company. And what I realized was during this pandemic, they still continue producing for the international electronics company, but at the same time, they pivoted to producing plastic buckets for medical waste. I'm not sure whether CALLUM has been doing that or not in his line. Probably got, right? Don't have. And this is one area where I think you can produce not just for Malaysia, but the entire world as well. There are many other countries, including in the region, where the vaccination rate is still quite low. And this is where I think you can produce not just for Malaysia, but after the vaccination rates in Malaysia have gone up, we can actually export these products. And I also want to make a pitch in terms of these kinds of products, right? Medical related products. I think we also need to up our game in terms of the technology that we're using. So for example, if let's say you're producing medical buckets or even medical plastic containers for medical waste, right? Why not incorporate RFID or IoT devices in these products, so that, for example, when the medical waste bucket goes up to a certain level, let's say 3/4 full already, you can immediately send out an IoT signal to say that, look, I need to be replaced. I need to be sent to the disposal site, the sanitary disposal site for this medical waste. And this can be part and parcel of us upping our game as well, not just to produce the plastic components, but to show something that's technologically advanced. And this is in line with I 4.0 kind of practices. And then the third area I want to talk about is, finally, COVID has provided an impetus for many SMEs in the manufacturing sector in Malaysia to shift towards I 4.0 best practices. When I was Deputy Minister, it was very hard to convince the SMEs to even think about IR 4.0, a policy that was launched when I was the Deputy Minister at MITI by the previous Prime Minister. But now, when you see that a couple of trends converging, firstly, the supply of foreign workers in Malaysia is, much less compared to before. Many have gone back home during COVID, and it's hard for them to come back. And I think, any government now, whether it's this one or the next one after the next general election, would not want to open the floodgates again for foreign workers, right? So we really need to know how to think of converting some of our practices in our offices, in the manufacturing sector, to IR 4.0. And of course, this is where people like SHRDC comes in with your smart manufacturing, courses and workshops, and your IR 4.0 workshops. And what I think is really necessary for companies here to get their hands dirty is to really look at use cases. And I think Sok Ling has some on the SHRDC website. Probably some of these things can be enhanced to show the changes before and after in the factory floor, so that you, as an SME owner in the manufacturing sector, or even as a management staff, you'll be able to see how these best practices are deployed. And then with this, we can actually not just enhance our products, enhance our processes, but end up being contributing to the larger ecosystem of IR 4.0 moving into the future. I can give more examples later on, but right now I think I'll stop there and then I'll pass it back to CALLUM or Sok Ling. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ong. I think, first of all, I think all of us are very keen. I think all of us know that Dr. Ong has been appointed by Amat Berhormat Menteri Besar Selangor to be in the Operation Surge capacity and also approved by YBKJ. So Dr. Ong, with all these things and then with the recent announcement by YBKJ that anyone can walk into any PPVs anytime to get a jab, how will this affect the PCAS program, in your opinion?
Okay, so for the industry vaccination, there will be two programs that will be running concurrently. One is the PCAS program under MITI. I think most of you who are familiar with it would have signed up already, and you probably will be getting notifications within this week at the latest early next week, because the surge is supposed to start on the 26th of July, next Monday, until the end of the week, the 1st of August. The other program that's running concurrently would be the CellVax vaccination program under the Selangor State Government, right? And of course, there's a difference in pricing structure. I think you guys are aware of that. I would say that for CellVax industry, you may be able to get more direct customer service from them because they have more resources deployed towards that end. And you'll be able to get probably vaccinated in a more comfortable setting for your workers, especially if, let's say, you are in the service line. So, for example, there are companies like BMW, a couple of insurance companies that have sent their workers to be vaccinated under CellVax, and they have 5 PPVs operating currently. This is Tropicana Garden Malls. It's a new mall, so air conditioning and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Aurora. It's a new shopping mall as well in Bukit Jalil. You have one in Bandar Baru Bangi, which is in my constituency, called Evo. And then you have Di Palma in Shah Alam. And the last one is PKNS, Complex PKNS in Kelana Jaya. Right, so those two programs run concurrently. And the supplies are being given by CITF under YBKJ's responsibility. The initial allocation is 250,000 doses each. There may be some adjustments as we go along, depending on how many of the workers are actually given this normal MySejahtera appointments, right? So in regards to your question on what happens after the 1st of August, I think CITF has just issued a statement basically saying that for those of you who have appointments, follow your appointments. Don't shift your appointments, especially those with their first doses coming up very soon. Don't cancel your appointment and then later expect to just walk into any PPV. The CITF has also announced that the walk-ins are not for every PPV starting on the 1st of August. They would do some adjustments and likely would be only some PPVs that will be open to walk-ins, and probably with a mixture of different vaccine options according to each PPV. But I think it's important for us to recognize and realize that the sooner you get vaccinated, the higher the numbers will be in terms of total vaccination. And then that will help the government to open up the economy. So if let's say you say, it doesn't matter, I delay until first week of August, second week of August, then the numbers of vaccination is not going to be as high. And then people will feel less secure, and then they will put pressure on the government to say that don't open up so quickly. Right? So we need to help each other. We need to help businesses as either employers or as employees to help the government get past these numbers of vaccination targets so that more of the economy can be opened up. Yeah, does that answer your question, CALLUM?
Yeah, sure, Dr. Ong. I think all of us are for the government, coming in. I think all of us are for the government working together to have more people vaccinated. But then I think we're also aware that Netherlands, when their Prime Minister lifted the lockdown over the weekend, that weekend they have 600% surge in COVID-19 cases because everyone was so happy to go out and have a great time. So when we start doing all this, how would our government, especially the operation surge capacity, what are they going to do to mitigate this danger, this risk?
Yeah. So I think yeah, so I think we've seen in the past, government not just lifting all restrictions and allowing you to party the next day after we reach target, right? So I think what will likely happen is that there will be a slower, and more sort of like more smooth kind of transition towards opening up the economy. And I think later on there will be more, how should we say, guidelines put in to allow for those who have been fully vaccinated to take part in more economic activities, including crossing borders. Right. So this has been announced by the Prime Minister, or indicated by the Prime Minister last weekend. I think there will be more announcements forthcoming this week. So for example, I can think of a situation whereby you will have be able to have in-restaurant dining, let's say starting in August. I'm just throwing out there. I'm not making any official announcements. In restaurant dining, start in the Klang Valley starting in, let's say, the first week or the second week of August, but only if, let's say, you've been vaccinated, right, twice. If let's say you've been vaccinated twice, they may allow you to have dine in as many as 5 people. That's what Singapore is doing right now, right, with the proper SOPs being observed. So I think we can do the same thing. There's no Euro 2021 big football matches coming out anytime soon, and I think nightclubs and discos will probably remain closed. So I think the chances of us experiencing what the Netherlands is facing, is not really that high. That being said, I think we do have to continue following SOPs. I think Malaysia is fortunate in that sense, whereby I think even with the lifting of, let's say, EMCO or MCO later on, I think most people will still wear masks. Don't you think, Callum?
Yeah.
We will still go out and wear, when they go out, they'll still wear masks and all that. Yeah.
In fact, all these things, in my company, for example, we practice wearing double mask, where everyone is required to change mask daily. Meaning when they come into to log in, we will provide them with 2 new masks. And then also at one time we were giving them vitamin C on a daily basis to ensure that their immunity system is strong. And of course, the SOPs and all that will follow. Dr. Ong, you mentioned about the 446 just now. And I think this is something which is bothering a lot of companies. If you ask me, most companies will fail if they strictly enforce the 446, the Act for 446. I brought this up during our chat, our virtual meeting with MITI. And then one of the things I said that is that sometimes it's not because we don't want to, rent more apartments or more, houses for our work, for our, employees. Most of them say you're not able to get them. And rental has gone up. Let's say my area, for example, for those Surya, Subang, Surya, Mutiara, near the Masing area. We used to pay rental back then 300 plus a month per unit. It has now gone up to 750 to 800. We still pay, no choice. But the thing is, even if you're going to get more, it is not available. So, and then of course, when you go to the, double-story shop houses and double-story houses, many of the owners are not willing to rent it out to the foreign workers for obvious reasons. So one of the things I brought up to, MITI was that we should allow shop lots. Many of the shop lots are not occupied on the second, on the ground floor is occupied. First floor, some are occupied. Most are not, especially on the second, third, and fourth floor. It is not occupied. Rental is cheap and it's left idle. So I said, why don't we then make use of all this, allow them to convert all these things into hostels with social distancing.
Callum, I'm going to preempt you there and basically say that I think this, KPKT or the Ministry of Housing and Local Government has already issued a circular in March giving guidelines on how to give temporary approval, including CCC, for workers' accommodation of up to 2 to 3 years, including on-site at the factories, where the factories are big enough to accommodate on-site workers' accommodation. I think you're aware of that, right, the circular?
No, there's a thing, Dr. Ong.
Oh,
I think
you're
the
not
communication needs to be
okay.
improved.
So yeah. So I will send. I think Sok Ling, you've heard me talk about this before, right? I will send the circular to Sok Ling, and I'll send the circular to you as well. And then under Plan Malaysia, which is an initiative under KPKT, they actually have more detailed guidelines on how you can convert shop lots, exactly what you say, second and third and fourth story shop lots into temporary accommodation for workers. So that has been endorsed by the Selangor state government. It has not gone down to the PBT level, the local authority level yet, because they've not had managed to organize many OSC meetings. For the obvious reason, we were under EMCO, right? So I'm working together with the EXCO in charge of local government in Selangor, YB Eng Zihan, as well as the councillors that I know in the various PBTs, the local authorities, to help them craft and make recommendations, specific recommendations on what can be accepted as guidelines in the local council for all these arrangements. So the KPKT circular is actually 4 or 5 categories: on-site, factory accommodation, this conversion of shop lots, even using terrace houses and whatnot. And then I think right now there are a lot of apartments that actually underutilized, hard to sell out and all that, sell out to the market for various reasons. And I think those can be areas which can be used as accommodation for the workers, and then get compliant, get the certificate of accommodation. But it'll take some time. I think CALLUM is absolutely right. If I ask those workers, those factories in my areas, how many of them have applied for Act 446 certificate of accommodation, I would say hardly none, hardly any. But what I am glad to say is that many companies in the manufacturing sector realize that they need to be more proactive. So, for example, one of the industry associations in Belakong, they have actually acquired a piece of land to build a CLQ themselves, to be able to house a few thousand workers in their own from their own members. And this will have a clinic facility, the health facility, medical checkups, and all that that will improve significantly the quality of life of these workers. And one other thing, I think we also need to realize that this is not, I mean, it's a humanitarian thing. Obviously, that's the baseline, but it's also good for business, right? Because your workers are less likely to get sick. Your workers are less likely to be unhappy and run away. And also, whatever that you export is less likely to come under scrutiny from, let's say, your customers. We've seen how even some of the big glove companies in Malaysia has been penalized by the US government because of, potential abuses of these kind of labor practices, right? Okay, so Sujata, I think has released, has put up some stuff there on age prop. She all these guidelines, is something that we need to keep in touch with, and I can send you the detailed guidelines, as and when I have access to them.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. You see, I brought up this back during that meeting, and then they actually got someone to contact me and ask me for my proposal, which I gave. So I said, one of the things we must do must come from top up, because the bomber has the guideline, MBBJ has the guideline, and I said they're not wrong. They were told to follow all these guidelines, but now this is a crisis. Instruction from the top should come down and tell them, forget about all these things. Like I said, on a temporary basis, we can go back to that later on. But having said that, having got all these things done, maybe because we were so flooded with so much information indigestion, it get cluttered, it get buried in all the information, and it's not brought up again. Maybe you can propose to them to highlight all these things, because many of us will be very keen to look at that. The other thing, Dr. you gave good ideas about, what the plastic industry, for example, can do. You talk about, the medical industry, which is something very big right now, and everybody needs that. My company, LH Plus, from, you can see from background, beverage bottle, good quality houseware, containers for Rubbermaid, for Tupperware and all that. We have actually ventured into medical devices, not devices, medical disposal parts, and later the medical devices. When he mentioned about, the
IoT,
the
medical
bucket,
buckets,
medical bucket has been around for umpteen years. But your idea about the RFID and about the IoT, I think that is fantastic. Just adding a bit of thing which does not cost a lot of money. It helps at tracking and everything tremendously. And I think that's where the innovation comes in, thinking out of the box rather than following 50 years what has been done. You continue with that. The other thing moving forward, we also want to talk more about the industry 4.0. And I understand this one of your expertise and your forte when you were the deputy minister, you were promoting a lot on all this. You want to talk more about that, Dr. Ong?
Maybe take two questions first. I think BK and Hingui has been raising their hands. Yeah.
Okay. BK.
Maybe BK first, BK.
BK, unmute please, BK. Unmute.
Okay, all right.
Tiabo.
Okay, now I just think there's a misconception here saying that where factories are concerned, it is because of the foreign workers. It is not true, because in Rembau, there is this serious condition. Actually, it started, sorry, don't quote me, it's Nestle. Nestle doesn't have a single foreign workers. All their workers are local. So they have quite a number of employees in a certain taman. And that taman is now the, what's called, placed under EMCO with barbed wires and everything. So I think there has been a misconception and it has to be corrected. It is not the foreign workers. In fact, even in our factory, it is the locals where they don't treat the SOP seriously enough. And when you talk to them, they visited their in-laws, they visited their sister, which is across the road. So this is where the problem is. Foreign workers, you tell them strictly, they will not mix with other people.
Okay,
this is
BK.
my comment. Thank you.
BK, I agree with you almost 100%. I give you one example. There's a factory in my area where, okay, they're not very compliant, and it's not just them. They basically lock up the foreign workers in the factory accommodation and don't allow them to go out once COVID started because they don't want them to get infected, right? And but what happened was that they cannot lock up their local workers, especially the managerial staff, right? So one day, one of the managerial staff, where he went now in Singapore also we hear of these kinds of funny clusters. Then that person came back to the factory, had some symptoms, and he mixed around with the workers. So it's actually not the foreign workers who actually got the cluster and give it to the locals. It's the locals who got the COVID and then they give it to the foreign workers, right? And of course, because the accommodation, quarters are very cramped and all that, it's very easy to spread, right? So I think this is the kind of thing that this is the kind of misconception that people have that we need to sort of clarify. And I give you another example. I was very concerned that this PICAS, because they'll be bringing in quite a lot of workers, especially foreign workers, to get vaccinated, right? That another, sort of like a cluster may arise, like what happened in IDCC, right? There was a lot of fear about that. And then I consulted a health expert with MOH, and he told me that firstly, we should not differentiate between foreign and local workers, right? Or even foreigners and Malaysians. We don't. Somebody was saying that, we need to get the foreign workers tested before they can come to the PICAS site to get vaccinated. But it is not a requirement for you to get to get tested before you go to a PPV, right? So we shouldn't discriminate against the foreign workers by saying that they need to be tested before they come to the vaccination center, because they are as likely as us to have COVID, right? Or maybe less likely, right? So because this COVID thing is already in the community, it's not fair to again discriminate against them. So I agree with you. The challenge, BK, and I think CALLUM would agree with me on this, is that there hasn't really been better communication, especially on the part of MITI, to advocate on behalf of industry and to give this kind of more detailed evidence so that people don't see, kilang clusters as something that's, blaming, that leads to blaming of the foreign workers and then blaming of the factory owners.
I agree, Dr. Ong. My case and my company's case, 18th of May, when my people started coming back from the Hari Raya holidays, I make it mandatory to test everyone twice a week. Deep throat saliva test. Okay, everyone was good. Then later on, we had about 2 or 3 cases. Again, all local, not foreign workers. Foreign workers are very disciplined. The father, the husband came back, infected them, and of course, then we quarantined them. The other thing we should look at now, I think now the reporting, I must say, is much more accurate and giving a much clearer picture. Let's say we have 12,000, 13,000 cases, for example. The majority are, phase 4 or phase 5.
No, category 1 and 2. Category 1 and 2. Asymptomatic or very mild symptoms. Yeah.
Category 1 and 2. Category 4 or 5 is certainly very, very, very few. So we should not let that, overwhelm us. I use the word overwhelm, and we should look at it in the right perspective. So I think it's true. That's why I said my concern is when they start opening all this, and when too many people go in there, especially not drive-through, in the air condition with the Delta variant, it may pose some danger there. So, Dr. Ong, maybe you can.
Okay, so that's a very good point. And I've actually been talking to the Malaysian Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Association, MACRA, for them to push for better air circulation qualities, air circulation guidelines and also practices. And I'm glad to say that actually, if I'm not mistaken, the Department of Environment came out with some air circulation guidelines last week. This was following Singapore's announcement for new air circulation guidelines, I think about 3 weeks ago or a month ago, right? And I'm glad to report that this morning at the CITF meeting, my first CITF meeting, where I was invited by Khairi Jamaluddin to attend, NIOSH actually updated their air circulation guidelines using PWTC as a example. So I think there will be more of these kinds of guidelines being put in place. And I think, again, we shouldn't worry too much about the IDCC case. Yes, we should take note of it. But remember, there are over 500 PPVs, right? It's a lot of large numbers. 500 PPVs, you get 1 or 2 cases or places where the air circulation may not be that good. And then, there were also a couple of, volunteers who were not vaccinated. That's why you have these clusters happening. But by and large, I think the PPVs have been, pretty good in terms of carrying out their responsibilities well. And the other thing, CALLUM, I think all of us need to realize as well, the circulation is not just air circulation. It is the amount of time that a person spends in the PPV, exactly. Right? So the faster we can process people, they are in and out of there in half an hour, then they are less chances of spreading the virus in the PPV. Yeah.
I agree, Dr. Ong. I had mine 2 doses Sinovac in Bukit Jalil, Axiata Health, and very well professionally managed. The flow was good. I came out complete everything in less than 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was okay,
Yeah, Hengui,
thank you, YB. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for sharing your optimism about the vaccination. I'd like to ask a few questions about what do you think the government can do better to execute the NRP? The first question, I think when you talk about all this vaccination, the pace of vaccination, cases like for the last few days, we saw 12,000 and 98% are very mild cases. I think it's good for government to tell us of the 98%, whether they have vaccinated or 1 dose or 2 doses. That will also reinforce the confidence of people that, hey, you better get vaccinated. That will help you to build the protection against the Delta strain. The second question is about the statement made by all the foreign chamber. As a ex-deputy minister of MITI, what do you think government should do? Should they be taken lightly, or I don't see any very impromptu reaction to all this statement coming out from the foreign chamber, despite the local chamber have been putting a lot of pressure on the government in terms of better rectify all the SOP inconsistencies. So I think being a MP, maybe what I'd like to hear what your thought about this. The third one is about the concern that I have about this dine-in, whether I'm sure the NRP is looking into tying with the 2 doses and allow people to go into the restaurant. That's something that we have saw from Hong Kong and Singapore of late. But do you think this should be implemented when we are in the phase 2 or phase 3 or now? whether it should be in phase 2 or phase 3, or as we get closer to about at least 30 and 40% of the population got full vaccination. Thank you, YB.
Okay. On the NRP, I'm actually preparing a presentation later tonight to present to the Minister of Finance in my personal capacity because my leaders have already presented DAP's NRP proposals. Mine are a bit more fine grained, and then I'll be happy to discuss these things with you later. But I'll just give you the 6 points that I'm going to present. Firstly, the first point I'm going to make is to move away from the daily cases to more targeted indicators. This will allow more sectors of the economy to open up. And then as a result, we should be able to open up more sectors more quickly and safely, right? I don't think that there should be any sector that you can say, definitely this shouldn't open because it's impossible to comply with SOPs that would be safe. I think any sector, as long as maybe KTV, that one, another question. yeah, that one maybe hard to enforce, right? But I think any other sector, you should be able to put in certain SOPs to be able to allow at least a little bit to open. So for example, cinemas, I've been advocating for this for a long time already. Have there been any cinema clusters being reported anywhere in the world? I don't think so, right? But at the same time, they are the first to close and then the last to open. Right. Yes. So this is one example that we need to move towards. The third one is actually quick wins. We need to change or update regulations to allow for more economic activity. I gave one example just now in terms of the allowing commercial shop lots to be used, second, third, fourth story as workers' accommodation. There are others. And then fourthly, each ministry must look up for strategic advantages for economic activity under their care. So for example, right, one advantage that we have now that we should capitalize on vis-a-vis Singapore, right, is that Singapore actually does not allow many countries to transit in Changi.
Yes.
Right? So we should take advantage of that. If let's say you're coming from India, come through Changi Airport, right? As long as we can make sure that all of our workers, including foreign workers that are vaccinated, we are able to control the spread of this disease. We should take advantage of this situation to get more flights to come into Malaysia to use us as a transit point, right?
Come to KLIA.
Come to KLIA. Yeah.
Actually, Singapore also does not prohibit their people to travel outside. You don't have to apply for anything. You can just.
No, that's another example of.
So maybe
the
you
regulation
allow Malaysians with those can fly without any regulation.
Correct. So this is part and parcel of the regulatory changes that we need to update .
Yeah.
Okay, fifth one is the foreign workers issue must be addressed. I think this one we talked about it just now already.
Okay.
And then sixth one, maybe relating to what you say about the foreign chambers and all that. I think we should have more good business stories to be highlighted to restore this investor confidence. And I think the stories are out there. So for example, we have the first report of a unicorn in Malaysia, right? CALLUM, and I met the people there, Eric and all that. They are very innovative people. They are our first, technology unicorn. More and more of these things can be highlighted, right? So that's one. In terms of the NRP, I think in terms of dine-in, right? As in Klang Valley, we can actually speed it up. Phase 1, phase 2, even the phase 1, phase 2, I think the demarcation doesn't really make that much sense already. Yes, because we have so many cases, and then we were able to move to phase 1, right? So better just to stick to the different more targeted indicators that I talked about just now, that even the DG is talking about, and then use the criteria, second 2 doses, then you can do more things, and this will address the question that was asked by Alicia, right? Your local employees refuse to register for vaccination. Tell them, if you have 2 doses, you can travel back home to see your parents.
Yes. If you
then it'll be a different story already. You have 2 doses, you can go to the Kedai Mama to eat. You see how many people who want to go and register. Right? That combined with having the walk-ins in August, that actually can really increase the vaccination rate by quite a lot.
But the walk-in is only for those without appointment, no? With appointment, you cannot walk in, right?
Yeah, without appointment in the Klang Valley, with appointment in the Klang Valley, you should be able to get your appointment by next week.
I think a lot of confusion. That's why they came out a statement now.
Yes,
a lot of people thought they just walk in, don't care.
No, so it's okay. The statement is out already.
Communication.
Yes, the statement is out already. People will, share the statement very widely. Alicia, you have a question?
Hi, good afternoon, YB, Mr. CALLUM and Ms. Sok Ling. Okay, basically, this is a question that I've actually voiced, listed there for the local employees, right? Yeah, I think government should come up with more rules in terms of whether, those that aren't willing to vaccinate, the employers has the right to, impose some rules to let them be check on doing a PCR test or whatever antigen test twice a week, and then if the medical claim has been finished up, then they may have to self-pay for all the tests on that.
It is within the right of every employer to be able to do that for safety reasons.
I mean for us, we was very surprised that the local employees, there are some of them are really unwilling to register, come to a point, even though with the surge. And then another thing that pointing out on the dine-in for the Singapore, I'm currently situated in Singapore. So basically, even government was saying that 5 packs are allowed for fully vaccinated. But today is the new rules they actually implemented. But there are lots of hawkers and restaurants, they actually come up with another suggestion to the government saying that they still remain 2 packs. Regardless vaccination status, even though currently now is about 67% have been fully vaccinated or half of first dose. But in terms of those fast foods and hawkers, they also come up with a suggestion to the government saying that they still limit to 2 packs to dine in, regardless on the status. Just to share a bit more.
Yeah, so that's a very good suggestion. I mean, the restaurants themselves can set certain conditions. They can say, oh, government allow 5, but anyone want to have 2. That's up to them, right? But of course, then they have to suffer the loss in potential revenue. That's totally up to them. The issue that CW Lee raised, focus on what steps for companies to take, not government or authorities, something within our control. I think yes and no. Government has to propose certain things, but I think if let's say your company or your industry, you have additional proposals that you want to put for your company or for your industry, feel free to implement those within your company or to bring them up for industry to your industry association to share with others, and then each company can decide whether they want to follow those SOPs or not.
Dr. Since you are going to present your NRP to Babi Zafro, maybe you can add in the one, because last week on the 12th on Monday, in fact, when we MCMTC presented to the Board of Trustees of MIER, the Malaysian Institute of Research and
Economic Research.
I made it very clear that we should not look at essential and non-essential. And I give the example, when I go into a supermarket, you see areas, products are not essential being cordoned off. I said, why should that be the case? Number one, the non-essential products being sold are not going to spread COVID-19. What we should control is the number of people inside that supermarket at any one point in time, and not what you can sell or what you cannot sell. And the same goes to the factories. As long as those factories are following the SOPs, they're doing what needs to be done, let them operate. The country should get back on track as soon as possible. Otherwise, especially exports, we are going to lose out more and more and more. And our customers are not going to wait for us. If you tell them we're going to be locked down for another 2 weeks, they say, thank you, CALLUM, but I cannot wait. I will move my orders elsewhere. And I think, Dr. Ong, CHEN, EuroCHEN, JECTIM, everyone is already complaining about, the threat that they may have no choice but to start investing elsewhere or move the location, their production location elsewhere, if the government is not able to give them a firm date on that. What's the point of this, Dr. Ong?
Okay, yeah. So on essential, non-essential, I think I absolutely agree with that. Just want to add, sometimes I tell you, even the DG himself would not think of the impact that making these distinctions would have on his own ministry. The example of the plastics manufacturer that I talked about just now, on the surface, they're producing for, let's say, the E&E sector. And you may think E&E are not essential, right? in terms of trade, definitely very important. That one is a separate story. But this plastics company has pivoted to producing, what I said just now, medical waste baskets, but medical waste buckets, right? So if the DG wants to stop their production, he'll find that his own hospitals will be running out of these buckets, and then the whole vaccination process may be affected, right? That's one. Second thing is, you say essential, not essential. There are people in the service line that are in charge of ordering the PPEs, right? So on the surface, they are like service sector. You are sales and trading company, non-essential, right? But if you don't have these guys to go and do the PO and whatnot for the ordering of your PPEs, then your face masks and all that, you won't get any orders in, right? So yeah, and I think the government is moving towards that thinking lah. And once I think the Klang Valley shows the way in terms of the total number of vaccinations and how we can open up, I think the other parts of the country will also follow suit.
The whole supply chain will be affected very badly. Yeah.
So, CALLUM, the problem is, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the civil servants and all that, but for those who have not been exposed to industry like you, like the people here, like myself when I was at PT, you won't think of these things. It's like, hey, you are a manufacturer. The thing that you're manufacturing, I don't think we need. Then you are not essential. Can be anything can be boxes, right? Boxes I don't need during pandemic, but what are you going to use to store all the PPEs and all the other stuff that comes in?
But YB, I think I understand from other ministry, it cannot be from MITI, right? MITI should know all the supply chain, except for you.
It's not MITI's fault. No, MPM basically tell them all your kilans non-essential cannot operate.
Yeah, I know.
Right? And then, sometimes, the ministers are frustrated.
No, but we already more than a year managing the pandemic. Cannot be like you're learning from start.
Okay, this one is complaining about government SOPs already. Don't go into that.
Since you mentioned supply chain, goes back to 18 March last year, 2020. One day before the lockdown on March 19, we were invited to MITI. The minister came in later, chaired by Dato' Lokman and all that. They were talking about, what is allowed to operate and what not operate. So they were talking about food and all that. So I brought up the point that we should not just look at that. I said we should look at the whole supply chain. And that's where they started scribbling and started writing. I said, you talk about, and then the CEO of Nestle was sitting next to me. And then we were talking about, I said Maggie Mee, for example, or we take Gardenia bread or Massimo bread. I think you don't just sell the meat or the bread. Without the plastic bags, how are you pack them? Without the printing ink, without the carton, without the raw material, plastic raw material, how are we going to operate? So I said, we should look at the whole supply chain and not just the item per se. So I think that was one area where they came out, and I think they changed that luckily. I mean, it was good that at least we are getting more communication, interaction with especially MITI.
Yeah. So actually moving forward, I think manufacturing sector shouldn't have this kind of non-essential, essential, and even other sectors. And as the vaccination rate goes up, I hope that we can have that kind of clarity. Okay, so I think Michael Kong brings up a very important issue, the issue of services. Right? So services are seen as non-essential. But if you think about it, right, if let's say your lawyers, accountants and all that cannot operate, then it's hard for a lot of the legal contracts to be signed. We have this COVID relief bill that is supposed to give protection to SMEs in terms of rental arrears and all that. So, we need these services to operate again. And I think that, with the Klang Valley again showing the way, I think there should be more opening up, very, very soon, hopefully in the first week of August. Yeah.
Dr.
Okay,
Karen, go ahead.
Okay, so I think another thing that I want to bring up is Danny Lau talking about the testing prices and all that. Now, PCR, antigen, and now the Medical Devices Authority has actually approved quite a large number of self-testing kits, and you can buy this from the pharmacies already, even starting today. And I think that can be a way in which you can incorporate these into your own SOPs. Remember, using these kinds of self-testing devices, right? You don't really need to have a medical professional do it for you. If let's say it's just within your company, you want to sort of see the results yourself. So this is something that I think we need to incorporate, and Singapore is already doing that. So why not, we also do the same. Other countries are also doing that as well. Yeah.
Dr. Ong, you mentioned about first dose, second dose, which is very important. Now that if a big part of the population has been vaccinated, do you think what do you think would be the requirement for the mass screening? Will it be once a month, once every 2 months, or what do you think?
Okay, I think for factories, you should probably still do about once every 2 weeks. I think that's reasonable. I think, I think RTK antigen test would be cheap enough for that. But I think for your local staff, especially those staff that have high interaction with the foreign workers and the shop floor workers, right? You may want to use the self-testing kit on a daily basis, especially when you first come out of the lockdown, maybe for the first 2 weeks. And then after that, you can reduce the frequency to, let's say, once every 2 days, once every 3 days. And then after that, when things have come down quite a bit, then maybe once a week, So this adjustment according to each factory's best practices, and then you can recommend these best practices to MITI for other companies to consider, right? And again, it's every company, every factory is different, right? Because let's say my factory, I only have 50 workers, right? It may not make sense, for me to have my management staff to self-test every day, maybe once every 2 days, But you need to adjust your SOPs perhaps so that your interaction becomes still is SOP compliant. You still wear your face mask and face shield at least for the 1 or 2 months after we get at least 50% second dose, right? Okay, there's a question about top glove and these industries, glove industries with regards to the treatment of workers and staff. Okay, I think I don't want to finger any company, but those companies who they know themselves, management knows themselves, they have not complied with Act 446. I think many of them are trying to pivot and change already, building better accommodation quarters for their workers. That effort should continue. It should not be reversed or stopped just because we get a higher level of vaccination. And it starts right from the top. The different ministries need to coordinate on this so that there's can be public confidence in Malaysia, and also public confidence on the part of the foreign a market that's actually buying from these Malaysian companies.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Ong, I want your feedback. Is it after every crisis, whether it's a war or a pandemic, let's say we take the Japanese occupation or the Second World War. After Second World War, when things started picking up again, there's a shortage of everything in the market. You name it, everything is short, in short supply, whether it's raw material, components, parts, and finished goods. Now that the lockdown, with more and more vaccination, more countries doing that, the demand for all these product and goods will move up again. And many of us already, without the raw material, without the parts and all that. What would your advice be for people to plan ahead?
Okay, take advantage of Malaysia's current condition to move quickly forward in the near future. And what I mean is this: if you look at the region, right? I'm not trying to sort of like look down on our neighbors, but and there's a silver lining in what's been happening in Malaysia, in the sense that because of the high number of cases, there's actually a lot of fear among Malaysians of the COVID. And because of that, the vaccine hesitancy has gone down significantly. I know Alicia says that there's still some people, we cannot avoid, there will still be a handful that want to get vaccinated. But our vaccination rate is second to Singapore in the entire region, right? Singapore, Indonesia is slow, Vietnam is slow, Thailand is slow, right? So, we would be able to bounce out of this much faster than other places. And I think the challenge for us is to be able to reintegrate with the global supply chain as soon as possible and look for new markets for us to exploit. So for example, in places where, for example, some of our competitors in other countries in Southeast Asia, they cannot fulfill certain orders because of COVID, lockdowns and X, Y, and Z. Then suddenly we should go in. We go in, give a good price, capture that market first, don't try to exploit by charging a high price. And then you build that relationship, build those networks. And then from that on, maybe even think about co-investing in some of those countries, ask them to come and invest here, expand your operations, expand your network, and then suddenly you find that you are in a whole new ball game in terms of your reach and capabilities, right? Okay, there's a question here on people who get those two still get infected with COVID-19 positive, right? And we've seen a lot of reports on this. Remember, even if let's say the vaccine is 90% efficacious, right? There's still the 10% where you get infected. But the key thing about the vaccines is that when you get infected, very, very low likelihood of you dying. In fact, very, very few cases, and very few cases of very serious COVID, right? So it's like a normal flu. You get the flu, you stay at home, you don't go out, right? So for example, you always need to investigate and understand the numbers. Let me give you an example. Let's say the whole of Malaysia is vaccinated. 100% of Malaysians are vaccinated in residents. Suddenly, we see outbreak of 100 cases. In the news report, it will say 100% of 100% of the cases will involve those who have been fully vaccinated. That will be the headline. But everyone has been vaccinated, right?
Bad news sells, lockdown. Bad news sells.
Right? So you have to understand, like, there are reports that says, 600 doctors in Thailand get infected even though they've been vaccinated. But it's 600 out of 60,000. It's 1%, right? So you need to understand the numbers.
But Dr. Ong, you see, last year when we implemented MCO1, and my company, for example, was allowed to operate, but with only 50% capacity. And when push comes to shove, you have no choice. On one hand, you have to follow the SOP, follow the guidelines. On the other hand, we still have to deliver as much as possible. So what we did was we found that, in the past, it was a comfort zone. You don't have enough people, you bring in more. So because of that, I had no choice but to stretch my people. And we found that we could do almost the same amount with half the people, which means that, number one, many of the people are redundant. Number two, there's a lot of leakages and inefficiency in the system. So this opens up to a lot of thinking. And of course, the third thing is, how can we do more with less? In the past, if you're in this department, you handle that. Engineering, you handle engineering. You're in the production, you handle production. And because of the shortage, you have no choice, but everybody rotate and everybody works as a team. And it worked well. It also created a bond. And I think what we should do is to use this opportunity to push us to start thinking out the box and do what needs to be done, especially in terms of, automation. Start automation, we have maybe we should talk a bit about the grants with MIDA and all that. You want to start it, Dr. Ong?
Yeah. So, please, all those in the manufacturing sector who have not applied for these, the IR 4.0 grants, right? Please go ahead and do so. You can apply to have the readiness assessment. It's done free of charge. I started under the IR 4.0 Industry Forward program. And then after you've done the readiness assessment, you can apply for up to 500,000 in matching grants as part of the business intervention funding from MITI/MIDA. There's also a lot of other digitalization grants out there. I think MDEC has digitalization grants for you to do things like e-payments and e-wallets and different marketing kind of digital marketing schemes. CDEC in Selangor has that as well. So just go and experiment. And I would advise everyone to actually dip your toe into applying for government grants, even though the amount is not big. Right? Once you start applying and you find that, yes, this is not as hard as you think, and you may be able to get access to some of this funding, then you'll be parcel of the ecosystem, and the ability for you to and the ease in which you can actually apply for more grants and perhaps even be used as a showcase, like what, for example, CALLUM's company has been showcased as. It will actually give your company a higher profile and also allow you to at least understand the thinking of the policymakers better. Yeah.
Dr. Ong, tonight you are going to, present to YB Zafro. Maybe you can.
Not tonight, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. Last week I presented to the Board of Trustees of MIER. Then on Thursday, I'm going to present to Tan Sri Noor Aslan, the Executive Director of the Economic Action
EAC, yeah.
Same thing. One of the things I spoke about is to look at all those things that work. Number one, we talk about, let's say, the smart automation grant. Back then, it was 100 million, where each company was given 1 million, max 1 million to apply on a one-to-one matching grant. And the offtake was very good, very effective. So the government added another 50 million. It's 150 million. So what I'm proposing, let's say you have a restaurant, there are many things on the menu, but one or two things sells extra well. So you give more of that thing, prepare more of that food. So what I'm telling the government is that with the DISF, with your ACA, accelerated capital allowance, with your DTAP, the digital transformation accelerated under MDEC, and all that. So I said, put more money into the SAG because this is specifically for automation. My company, we applied for it. And the other thing that happened at the time is that my people felt very excited. They felt that they were contributing to the company. And of course, we invested. We looked outside of the, think out of the box. And then we got the approval. And headcount per line saves 80% headcount from 10 person to 2 person per line per shift. And output increased 300%. And the moment we started doing that, we found, and I told my team, even if MIDA has not given the SAG, I would have invested in that. But this was like an encouragement, an incentive, like you mentioned earlier. You get 2 jabs, you can go back, you can go out, So when you have the incentive, more people will look into it.
Okay, CALLUM, let me throw something out there to you and the other SMEs or other mid-tier companies in the manufacturing sector. If you want to do a public service, and maybe even showcase your company from a marketing standpoint, right? When you apply for these grants, when you go through the IR 4.0 process, right, you have to document it using video very carefully, right? Do a before and after. And then I said this to Sok Ling as well, right? I understand what you're saying. I've been to your factory before, so I can see what you're talking about. But for many of the other players out there, right, they cannot visualize, right? So if let's say you can see, okay, this is before how you did it, and then after you did it, you do it, better, and you can visualize it. And CALLUM, some of these SME Laupan and all that, right? They cannot see, they need to believe it when they see it, right? So when you are able to video and capture this, and maybe SHRDC can be part of that process, it will be easier for people to understand and embrace, right? Okay, a couple of other questions. Based on current, this is David, based on current NRP criteria, Selangor and KL, which are two of the main countries, economic, will not be progressing to phase 2 anytime soon. I think there should be some adjustments in terms of these phases, because there's a lot of these things are not set in stone, right? SOPs can change here and there, right? So as I said, this operation surge capacity is something that was new. It was just announced last week, and then suddenly in 2 weeks' time we find that Selangor, KL, 40% second dose, almost 100% first dose, the cases go down, and then hopefully we can speed up the process of opening up, maybe phase 1.5, maybe phase 2, far sooner rather than later. So this is something that I think we need to have some flexibility, right? Other questions: does it make sense for people interstate travel to observe lengthy period of quarantine? I think for Sabah and Sarawak, it really depends on the state governments, right? Sarawak, obviously, they're having state elections coming up soon, so they really want to control the situation, carefully. But also they've been quite successful in terms of vaccination. I think they've reached 30 or 40% second dose already. They're doing pretty well. Sabah is a bit slow because of capacity issues and also the high number of foreign residents there, right? Okay, I think that's about it. We're almost coming to 4:30. Yeah.
Soling, have you taken a photo already?
No, do you have any more questions or issues?
Dr. Ong, maybe there's something you can raise with YB Safru also. The SME has the 1 to 10 million HJPP loan. 80% grant, 70%, 80% granted by the government, depending on which program they're looking into. So what I'm proposing to MIER and also to EAC is that to extend this loan to the mid-tier companies from 10 million to 50 million. Number one, Dr. Ong, I think as an economist, without fresh injection of funds into the system, nothing moves. Chinese says that no money, no talk. You can have all the program, but without fresh injection funds, it will not move. Number two, we also understand that the government has limited resources, including funds. You cannot keep on giving fish. What we're asking the government is to give us the money to buy the utensils, the net, the fishing rod, the boat for us to go and do fishing. And if the government can do that without taking a single cent out, just giving the guarantee, then it's actually quite, I would say, very safe. Number one, the bank will read through the paper to see whether the company qualifies. Number two, SJPP will also look into it before they approve the loan. So from there, if we can get about 20-30 million per company for mid-tiers, and these are companies more established, and you look at
you're okay with paying the SJPP the sort of admin cost, right? You're okay with paying that, right?
Okay, SJPP, unlike Dana Jamin, Dana Jamin came to my place. They said, "CALLUM can, no problem, fine." But when I look at the cost, I said, "Thank you, but no thank you."
Yeah, I think the Dana Jamin, the fees, I mean, what YB say, I think it's a bit high. And we also raised that with Dana Jamin before.
Very high.
Look at Dana Jamin as of now. I think the utilization rate, I think it's quite
Very
low now. YB, maybe you can bring up to Tengku Zafar. I think from a chamber side, we have brought up with him. So we don't see anything move on that front. As what CALLUM say, I think we have to take care of those who are the mid-tier. You know, your SME, neither here nor there, those mid-tier one always being not looked after by the bankers and the financial institutions. Yeah.
So, Dr. Ong, imagine the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, and the ripple effect coupled with the velocity of transaction, how much things can go into that. And there's another reason, Dr. Ong. I think you know, MNCs prefer to work with the mid-tier companies, not because the SMEs are not important. Most, if not all, mid-tier companies were once SME. We were SME before.
No, they want to have some economies of scale. You want to have
no, with that, why me? When we give the job to the mid-tier companies, number one, we have most of the ISO certification required. Number two, we meet the compliances. Number three, we have the people, the trained personnel, the hardware, the software to do it. But when the mid-tier companies gets a job, we do not operate in isolation. We will work with the SMEs. We get them to supply the parts, the components, the packaging materials. So the whole supply chain goes together. So I think this is something they're not looking.
I think that's important. Somebody, Sham Kai Leong, my schoolmate, said SJPP, the cost will be about 2 to 3% of the amount guaranteed, right? So you have to be willing to pay that cost, lah. I think
I think it's lesser than that. What I mean?
Okay. Anyways, we can check on that. I think there are also other financing options. For example, the CRC, CGC. They also have packages out there. Yeah. What is it?
SME lah.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I mean, have to think of the SMEs as well, right? Right. So there's also other interesting options available. For example, I've talked about this before, that companies who are looking to reduce their electricity costs, they can look for, interesting financing options with, for example, there's a bank, Singapore Bank, UOB, that has partnered with some of the EPCCs, 6 EPCCs, to offer interesting financing options for installation of solar panels in your factory, factory rooftops and all that. And, even with net energy metering rather than the feed-in tariff is still attractive. The ROI is not that high. Of course, hopefully the solar panel cost will go down, later on once the companies have adjusted to some of these supply bottlenecks in the system. Okay, I think Heng Gui, one last thing, maybe one last thing.
Wait, YB, I want to get your thoughts about should the government introduce GST in coming budget? Second, should the government resort to a windfall tax or one-off corporate tax rate to get some money from the corporates to help to fund the budget deficit?
Number one, GST probably not the right time, especially when the rakyat are suffering. Number two, windfall tax, one-off with very strict criteria, and also to say that this is something that is not to be repeated only under this is only under very extenuating circumstances that this is being done, so that as to not send a wrong signal to the capital markets and investors. So number two should be considered. Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ong. Thanks again, Dr. Ong and CALLUM for answering those questions. I think we had an interesting sharing session this afternoon. It was a pleasure to have both of you with us today. So before we conclude the session, maybe we do a group photo. Please turn on your camera now. My colleague.
Before that, okay. Let's say the group photo, then I say something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Turn on your camera, please. Why so serious?
You are smart. Everybody will follow you and smile. Yeah.
You done, Marissa?
Just a second. I'm just going to take a screenshot for every room. So just keep on smiling, everyone. Here. The third room. All right, so I think that's it for everyone. I think I captured it nicely.
Thank you, Marissa.
Sukling.
Yes.
Sorry, you were supposed to pass me the number of Dr. Ong.
Yes.
No, I can pass it to you, BK. No problem.
All right. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so CALLUM, you want to say something first before I conclude, because there's one last poll to do.
Yeah. Dr. Ong, I just want to make this comment. I want everybody will look at it very positively. You know, when one door closes, another one will open. And what seems bad initially may actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise. So we should not look at the COVID-19 as something very bad. There's something that happened. And I always tell people it's not what happened, but how you respond to what happened that is very important. Then I also want to ask you this question, Dr. Ong. We know you are a very busy person. What motivated you to do this pro bono, services for the rakyat?
One thing to more directly help the SMEs, sometimes what we say in Parliament doesn't really translate to direct action. So one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was I helped a couple of SMEs apply for their outstanding wage subsidy program from 10,000 ringgit to 100,000 ringgit. So that helped with some of their cash flow issues. Right. And then second thing is the more people I talk to, including these kinds of forums, the more I find out about their pain points. I think this also will make me a better MP in terms of discussing policies in Parliament and with the policymakers. Yeah.
But you are alone. How can you handle so many things?
Oh, I have a good team. I have 12 interns currently working for me now. So they handle quite a lot of workload. And then I also don't get much sleep. Today I woke up at 4 o'clock to do my presentation for CITF, and I haven't slept since.
Okay, thank you. I think that's very important. We need more people.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, CALLUM, again. So before we end this session, we would like to run this last poll for today. 2 questions only. First is, would you like to participate in the pro bono consulting service by Dr. Ong? The second question is, are you interested to participate in the complementary training programs offered by SHRDC? So this is one of the many ways SHRDC help the community in SME, especially during these difficult times. So with the resources that we have right now, what we can do is, we do whatever we can within our capacity, our capability to support you, so that we can all continue to hold on, to get stronger and to build back better together. So please answer this poll. So to conclude today's webinar, thank you all again for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this sharing session brought to you by SHRDC, co-organized by MPMA. So thank you and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And your contribution. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.